Welcome everyone to the Spectre 3 Abyss build log. This was the first build ever with the Singularity Computers PowerBoard, and it was for a very special customer who has returned many times. His first build was actually Spectre Spirit, which we built into a Spectre 2.0 a few years ago now. And this was going to be a rebuild and upgrade, but actually the only component that we ended up using from Spirit was the Corsair AX1600i. So what is the Singularity Computers PowerBoard? The original idea I came up with during the development of Spectre 1. We were looking for a more advanced way of integrating cable management, and due to time constraints, what we ended up with was the integrated cable management channels and cable combs. And that followed through from Spectre 1 onto Spectre 2 and is still on Spectre 3. It was a very popular feature. But the original ideas behind Spectre was integration. So we used the idea of the distribution plate to integrate parts of the loop, the pump reservoir combo and loop sections, but at the same time we also attempted to optimize the loop layout. So the distribution plate was not just there for aesthetics. It was creating a shorter and cleaner loop, and then the aesthetics kind of just came from that, like the massive lighting feature, that having a distribution plate as the entire rear wall of the case, all of that kind of just came out of the original idea. The PowerBoard is just furthering that idea of integration, but it's really the same idea again as a distribution plate. It's just that this time it's a distribution plate for your cables. With the Spectre distribution plate, we built parts of the loop into the structure of the case, and with the PowerBoard, we are now building the cables into the structure of the case. Now these PowerBoards, the first three that we have launched, the Spectre 3 version, the Corsair 5000 series, and the Lian Li PCO11D, are add-ons for the cases. They can just be bolted right onto the back of the motherboard tray. The Spectre 3 PowerBoard integrates 24-pin PCIe and EPS, along with ARGB and PWM hubs. I won't go into all of the connectors, but there are a lot, and it does give you a lot more lighting, meaning you don't need extra hubs, controllers. So there's actually 11 ARGB outputs on this PowerBoard. It also has ARGB LEDs integrated into the PowerBoard, and they're facing out around the perimeter of the PowerBoard, so they shine right into the acrylic of the distribution plate, which just gives an awesome glow, much better than the original lighting on Spectre 3, which only shines down from an LED strip from the top. This really gets the light into all of the loop sections and the entire distribution plate. Other PowerBoards have more integration. So the 5000 series and the PCO11D PowerBoards both have SATA 2.5 inch and 3.5 inch, and other PowerBoards that we are working on have even further integration. We're actually working on a lot more integration. Just to be clear, the PowerBoard that you're looking at here is a prototype, and so a lot has changed. Some of the connectors, the printing. So the PowerBoard is obviously a PCB, and so a question that we've had come up a fair bit is how much power can it handle? We are not putting an exact number on it, but it can certainly handle a lot more than a 1600 watt PSU. It is over-engineered, and we've tested it very thoroughly over a long period of time with the most high-end components, dual 3090s, Threadripper, 1600 watt power supplies. And during all of the prototyping and testing, we never had any issues or failures. The only reason we did a lot of prototypes was just optimizing the circuitry, the connector positions, adding more connectors and things like that. We've had a ton of questions about the PowerBoard, and I certainly have a lot more to say, but I'll leave that for future videos. If you have any questions, contact us at support@singularitycomputers.com, and I'll be the one answering. Probably the key thing to building high-end liquid-cooled systems is the order in which you do things, the order in which you install the components. And this is the same for most cases, because most cases are pretty much the same, very similar. But some cases, that order is going to be very different. And if you're building into a new case for the first time, you need to expect that the process might be very different. And this is something that for Spectre 3, it is a very different and unique case, and people sometimes find it a little bit hard to get used to that different component order, but there are certain tricks that you can learn, and there are other cases where you even need to think about it a lot more, and then if you modify the case, it all changes again. Installing a couple of Elites onto a Spectre 3 almost doubles the fluid volume. Usually Spectre builds take around 1, maybe 1.2 liters. With a couple of Elites, they take 2 to 2.2 liters. You can see that filling the loop is very easy, even with all of this extra air volume that the Elite distribution plates have added. And that's because Spectre doesn't suffer from the usual distribution plate problem of low fluid volume. It's time to install the cables, and this is a part of building that quite honestly I used to dread, even with Spectre builds where it's a lot easier because you have the integrated cable management channels and cable combs, and the whole process only takes about 15 minutes. But on builds in the past with other cases, particularly the big Case Labs builds, I have spent up to a week on cable management. Client build 18, for example. And if you take a close look at that build, you'll see why I spent so long on it. Rebuilding cables because I didn't quite get the lengths right or they weren't sitting right. Client build 25 was another very memorable one. I think I spent 3 days on cable management just fussing around. But this took about 5 minutes just to plug the cables in because there is no cable management to be done. Keep in mind this is a prototype PowerBoard, so we actually have a triple 24-pin on the PSU side instead of the production PowerBoards, which have one 24-pin and then EPS and PCIe 8-pin connections. We didn't even sleeve the cables on the PSU side. They're going to be completely out of sight, although that's never been an excuse for us, but we just didn't want the extra bulk in the PSU shroud. So there's two little mods that we did for this build. So we didn't yet have the 90-degree 24-pin adapter, which converts 90-degree 24-pin connections on motherboards so that you can plug them in to the PowerBoard. So it meant that we had to make a very short and twisted 24-pin, so we made a shroud to go over that. A lot of people have asked for that shroud, so we've been providing that for customers. And we also have another component that's going to be released shortly, which is the Singularity Computers 180-degree PCIe adapter. We have 3 8-pins in a row, and we just put a small laser cut piece of acrylic over it to cover it up. And you can see that from the front of the build, hardly any cables are visible. You can just see the EPS in the top left and from some angles the PCIe.